Hey guys, tonight we travel far, past the dusty folds of the Horn of Africa, across incense trails and golden hillsides, all the way to the fragrant world of ancient Ethiopia. You're standing in the middle of a bustling market, and the very air is thick with sweet, smoky curls of frankincense. It's not just a smell, it's a fog that wraps around your senses, earthy and otherworldly, like the ghost of a forest after rain. There's music somewhere, a stringed crar drifting on the breeze, and the clang of bronze trays from spice sellers, each trying to outdo the others with louder claims and louder shirts. A woman with eyes like obsidian smiles as she wafts a burning censer under your nose. The smell hits you like a story, layers of citrus, pine, and something ancient, like the inside of a forgotten temple. You blink and realize, this isn't just trade. It's worship. It's medicine. It's the perfume of power. But let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a full week here. The sun alone is a full-time job. The mosquitoes are trained assassins, and every single person around you knows what every single scent means. And if you don't, well, you're going to stick out like a fermented onion. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin in the capital of Aksum, long ago but already ancient even in memory. The streets are alive, not with cars or chatter, but with scent. Burning wood, cooking spices, and always frankincense. It's used to bless contracts, lull children to sleep, mask less charming odors, and quite frankly, to show off. People around here don't just wear gold, they wear smell. A merchant waves you into a narrow stall, dark except for shafts of sunlight cutting through wood-slatted ceilings. He grins and holds out a block of resin, amber-colored and sticky at the edges. You sniff. It's rich, woody, and not as sharp as you'd expect. Boswellia, he says. From the trees up north, the good kind. You can tell by the tears. You blink. Tears? He points to the resin's shape. When the tree bleeds, it cries like this. The best drops look like sorrow. You look again, and he's not wrong. The chunks gleam like frozen pearls, each a tiny monument to patience and pain. And that's just the raw stuff. Wait until you see what they do with it. He throws a pinch into a tiny clay burner. Smoke rises in ribbons, and your eyes sting slightly, but in a pleasant, hypnotic way. Around you, people pause. This is no casual scent. This is ceremony. Every whiff carries a purpose. It's not just about smelling good. It's about invoking something unseen. You watch a woman pass with a brass pot shaped like a lion's head, its mouth steaming with scented vapor. She's wearing robes embroidered with tiny symbols, spirals, suns, and shapes that look like raindrops, or tears again. Royal priestess, the merchant says. That incense blesses the emperor's mourning. You nod solemnly, trying not to breathe too loud. In Ethiopia, frankincense isn't a side note, it's the melody. And from here, your nose becomes your compass. The scents tell you where to go next, toward the tree groves, toward the distilleries, and deep into a world where even a grain of resin can carry the weight of memory, healing, and holy awe. You take one more look at the burning censer. The smoke twirls like a dancer, never quite solid, never quite gone. And before you can stop yourself, you reach out and follow it. The smoke leads you slowly, steadily, away from the market, past wandering goats and sleepy donkeys, beyond the chatter of traders hawking saffron and carved ivory. Your sandals crunch over gravel paths that shimmer with heat. The scent of frankincense lingers in your hair, in your sleeves, in the very air, like it's following you back home. But you're not heading home, not yet. You're heading to the highlands. You journey northward, where the land rises into jagged hills and long shadows stretch across sun-baked earth. This is where the boswellia trees grow. Not in neat rows like an orchard, but wild and stubborn on rocky outcrops, gripping crumbling cliffs with roots that defy logic. You wouldn't guess these gnarled, half-dead-looking trees could bleed something as precious as sacred perfume, but they do, every single year. You meet your guide at dawn, a man named Tesfaye, whose face seems older than his body. His cloak is made of thin cotton, but his stride is confident as a king's. He doesn't say much, just nods once and gestures for you to follow. He's brought a goatskin satchel, a curved blade, and a hand-carved incense burner. You've brought 0 upper body strength and one slightly misguided sense of adventure. You hike up steep hillsides, past birds with iridescent feathers and rock hyraxes sunning themselves like furry potatoes. Tesfaye stops by a tree that looks like it's halfway between living and giving up. The bark is flaky, like peeling paint, and the trunk leans just slightly, like it's listening. "This one is ready," he says quietly. You blink. Ready for what? He pulls out the blade, and gently, so gently, you watch him make a shallow cut in the bark. Not deep, not violent, just enough to invite the tree to speak. A milky white tear begins to form. You watch as it swells, then stills, like a droplet frozen in time. "This is the first cut," he murmurs. "We call it the wound of the morning. It will take a week to cry." He's not being poetic. That's how the process works. The boswellia tree doesn't give up its resin easily. It needs to be asked, waited on, honored. After the first cut, you come back days later. The tear has hardened. That first hardened drop is scraped off and discarded. It's the bad blood. Only after the second or third round do the truly fragrant tears emerge. Amber golden, almost translucent, and rich with scent. And yes, they're called tears. Even in ancient texts, there's something reverent about it, as if the tree itself mourns what it gives. You try your hand at a small incision on another tree. Your cut is too crooked. The resin that emerges is sluggish, cloudy. Tesfaye gently corrects your angle. "Clean wounds, clean tears," he says. You nod, as if that's a normal sentence to say about plants. As the morning grows hotter, the scent grows stronger. It's not smoky here. It's clean, sharp, slightly lemony. The raw frankincense has none of the heavy sweetness from the market. It's the unbaked version, the beginning of scent. And for just a moment, you feel like you're at the start of the world, when everything smelled new. Historians still argue whether this particular species, Boswellia papyrifera, was the same one prized by Egyptian and Roman empires. Some scholars claim those empires imported resin from the Arabian Peninsula. Others say the finest drops came from these very hills, harvested by hands just like yours. Centuries before, borders were drawn, or names were etched into stone. You gather resin into a small palm-woven pouch. It sticks to your fingers like honey hardened by the sun. Tesfaye adds a few leaves of something that smells peppery and strange. "Keeps the spirits calm," he says. You decide not to ask whose spirits he's talking about, yours or the trees. Later, you sit under the wide fan of an acacia tree, sharing water and barley cakes. Your clothes are damp with sweat, but you're glowing in a way that only comes from doing something older than writing. You've harvested tears from a tree that doesn't rush. And maybe, just maybe, that slowness is the point. The path down is quieter. The goats bleat lazily. The air cools a little. And every time you reach into your pouch and feel the resin pebbles shifting, it feels like you're holding pieces of time. Fossils of feeling. Crystallized sunlight. You don't speak much on the way back. You don't need to. The scent says it all. You return to the village late in the day, your skin glazed with salt, your pouch of resin rattling like sacred dice. The scent of frankincense clings to your fingers, even after washing, piney, citric, just a touch of something medicinal and warm. It's in your hair, your sleeves, your memory now. You understand why they call it a holy perfume. It doesn't ask for your attention. It quietly takes hold. That night, after a dinner of lentils and flatbread by the fire, Tesfaye brings out a small clay burner. "Tomorrow," he says, poking at the embers, "you'll learn how to make the tree weep twice." You raise an eyebrow. "I thought we already made it cry." He smirks faintly. "The second harvest is stronger. It has resolve." The next morning, you're up before the birds, walking again beneath trees that now seem less like scenery and more like wise old souls. You revisit the same trunk you marked yesterday. The first tear has dried into a crusty flake, dull and cloudy, like candle wax after a long burn. Tesfaye hands you a hooked blade and nods. This time you cut more confidently, just beneath the first mark. A new tear forms quickly, larger, glossier, almost golden. You smile. "Is this one good?" He inspects it and nods. "Better. The third will be perfect." It turns out, frankincense harvesting is a slow negotiation. You wound, you wait, you return, you receive. It's a ritual, not unlike baking sourdough or ghosting someone just enough to keep them curious. Each tree yields just a few hundred grams a season. Overharvesting means stress, infection, even death. The best harvesters know their trees personally, how much they can take, when they need rest. It's farming, yes, but with a touch of reverence. You're not managing a crop, you're conversing with a being. Back in the village, the harvested resin is sorted by size, clarity, and aroma. You kneel beside women with practiced hands, sifting through piles like jewelers judging gemstones. Some tears are milky and opaque. Those go for ritual incense. Others are clear and golden. They'll be saved for perfume making. One woman lets you smell a particularly fine piece. "Lemon," you say. She grins. "And honey, yes? Touch of smoke, maybe cedar?" This one comes from the eastern slope trees. Higher sunlight, better sap. You nod, like you knew that already. Historians still argue whether these harvesting methods were passed down directly through family lines, or whether villages shared techniques across generations in more fluid, seasonal gatherings. Some texts suggest priestly classes managed the groves. Others say it was women, often overlooked in written records, who carried the scent knowledge, encoded in song and story rather than scrolls. Either way, you're learning fast. Frankincense isn't just gathered, it's tended. It's coaxed, cured, cared for. And when it's time to move it, that's where the caravans come in. You see the first signs of one that afternoon, a long thread of figures rising like smoke against the horizon. Camels, of course, loaded with sacks and baskets tied in place with palm rope and goat leather. Each animal moves like it's done this 1,000 times, which, to be fair, it probably has. You join a trader named Jonas, who explains the art of packing resin. "Weight matters," he says, adjusting a burlap-wrapped bundle. "Too heavy, the camel kneels. Too loose, the scent escapes." He hands you a pouch to sniff. It's sharp and sweet. "This is first grade. Goes to temples. The rougher stuff? Traders burn it on the road. Keeps insects off, and sometimes bandits." You cock your head. "Bandits don't like perfume?" He chuckles. "No, they love it, but they don't like not being able to see who they're robbing. Smoke helps us vanish." That night, as the caravan sets up camp, you help build a tiny fire from dry twigs and frankincense bark. Someone adds a few resin tears to the flame, and within seconds, the air fills with silver wisps. The smoke swirls upward, catching moonlight. You sit back, mesmerized, while the camels chew and the desert hums. It's calming, almost sedative. No wonder people have been burning this stuff for millennia, not just for its scent, but for the way it gently rewires your thoughts, slowing them, softening their edges. And right then, halfway between grove and city, nose full of sacred smoke, you begin to understand. The perfume doesn't come after the resin. It begins here, beneath the trees, between cuts, in the silence of the wait and the hush of the caravan's pace. The morning sun stretches its golden fingers across the sand, and you're already walking, your sandals brushing loose gravel as the caravan snakes forward through pale hills. The scent of frankincense lingers on everything, your clothes, the camel's blankets, the trader's breath. It's no longer a perfume, it's your shadow. The path you walk now is old, older than most cities. It winds its way through plateaus and valleys, past long-abandoned way stations and forgotten boundary stones. This is part of the incense route, a vast and sprawling trade network that stretched from the Horn of Africa to the Red Sea, across Arabia, and deep into the Roman Empire. And frankincense? It was the backbone of it all. You pass a cluster of stone ruins at midday, just a few broken pillars and a crumbling water basin. Jonas points toward them with his staff. Caravanserai, he says, used to be a resting place. Even Roman traders came through here. Can you imagine them, in their sandals and togas, begging for water? You grin, picturing a sunburned Roman trying to haggle in terrible Gehez. But this route wasn't just for resin. Along with frankincense, these caravans carried myrrh, gold, spices, slaves, and ideas. Along these dusty paths, you could hear 6 languages in one day, trade an ox for perfume, and learn 3 different prayers by dusk. One camel stumbles slightly, and a pouch of resin bursts open, scattering translucent tears onto the earth. Everyone groans, but no one panics. You kneel to help, scooping the golden pieces back into the leather sack. As you do, you notice something. Ants, tiny ones, swarming toward the spilled resin like it's sugar. Jonas notices too. They say the ants are drawn to the god's tears. You raise a skeptical brow. He shrugs. Or maybe they just like the taste. You keep walking. Hours pass in a rhythm. Step, sway, sniff, squint. The scent of the resin warms under the sun, rising into the air in faint waves. At times, it's as if the trail itself is breathing, a long, aromatic exhale across the sand. Eventually, you arrive at a town that feels carved from the dust itself. Whitewashed stone buildings line the narrow roads. There's a low hum of conversation and the musical ring of metal being hammered. Bracelets, incense burners, decorative clasps. And yes, the smell is everywhere. This is a scent town. Even the children's toys carry traces of it. Little carved animals that smell faintly sweet from where I've been stored beside bundles of incense. You're ushered into a courtyard shaded with woven mats. A merchant with wide arms and wide smiles invites you to sit. This, he says proudly, is where the scent becomes story. He unwraps a cloth bundle and lays it out before you. Stone mortars, carved pestles, folded leaves, globs of hardened sap, chunks of wood, dried herbs, dried fruit peels, and little pouches of mystery powders. It looks like a medieval chemistry set crossed with a snack tray. This is a perfume workshop, and you've just become the least qualified apprentice in it. A woman introduces herself as Messeret, soft-spoken, sharp-eyed, and with a laugh that seems to arrive before her jokes. She points to each item as she speaks. Frankincense, myrrh, dried fig skin, musk bark, acacia gum, spiced root, old tangerine peel, flower dust, and this, she taps a dark chunk of something tar-like, is black resin. Smells like nothing, but binds everything. You're handed a small dish with warm oil. Into it, she places a crushed resin tear and stirs gently. The oil takes on a golden hue and begins to emit a soft, mellow aroma, less sharp than smoke, more intimate, closer to the skin. This is base oil, she says. It carries the scent, like memory carries dreams. You glance around. In every corner of the room, different oils are infusing. Some over warm stones, others in sealed jars, buried halfway in cool earth. The methods vary, but the intention is the same, to coax scent from silence. Historians still argue whether ancient Ethiopian perfumers were formally trained or simply passed their knowledge through family lines. Some evidence suggests temple schools. Others believe the secrets lived in poems and songs. You suspect both are true. Some things are too sacred to be written, yet too beautiful not to be shared. Meseret hands you a shallow bowl and asks you to grind. You press the pestle into a mix of dried petals and crushed resin. The friction releases scent. The scent releases memory. You feel like you're unlocking a room inside your own skull, one that smells like sun-warmed stone and ghosted sweetness. After an hour, you've made something. A paste, not yet perfume, but it hums with possibility. Meseret sniffs it and gives a slow, approving nod. Not terrible, she says. You beam. As the sun begins to dip behind the hills, the workshop glows with amber light. The air feels thicker now, steeped in oils and crushed herbs and secrets. A child runs through the courtyard with frankincense smoke trailing behind her like a comet. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you're not in a trade town or a workshop. You're in the middle of a story made entirely of scent. And the next chapter? It starts with a single drop. You wake before sunrise, stirred by the faint clink of pottery and the distant cough of a camel. The scent in the air is gentler now. Less smoke, more oil. It clings to the floor mats and seeps from the clay walls. Even your pillow smells faintly sweet, like someone whispered flowers into it overnight. Meseret meets you at the doorway, already alert, already amused. She hands you a small stone disc, smooth and dark. Perfume stone, she says. You'll need it. You turn it over in your hands. It's cool and slightly porous, almost like charcoal. You're still blinking sleep from your eyes when she leads you into the inner courtyard, where low tables have been arranged in a loose circle. Upon them, crushed resins, oil-soaked cloths, beeswax lumps, flower petals drying on flat trays. Today you learn how perfume is assembled, not poured from a bottle, but built like architecture. You start with the base. Every scent, Meseret explains, has layers: base, heart, and top. The base lingers the longest. That's where frankincense comes in. It's solid, grounding. A scent that doesn't apologize. Mixed with heavy oils like moringa or sesame, it anchors the perfume, giving it a spine. Your hands are slick with oil and powdered resin before breakfast. You blend slowly, kneading the paste with the perfume stone to keep the temperature steady. Meseret watches carefully. Too fast, she says. It'll split. You nod solemnly, as if you hadn't just been kneading like it owed you money. Once your base is smooth, you add dried herbs, lavender, lemon balm, maybe some ground juniper. These become the heart notes, what the scent feels like. You breathe them in, and suddenly, you're in a highland field or a grandmother's kitchen. A good heart note tells a story. A great one tells your story before you know it. People think scent is for attraction, Meseret says, adjusting your ratios. But no, scent is for remembering. You don't fall in love with someone because of how they smell. You remember them because of it. You pause, caught by that truth. Historians still argue over the origins of this layering technique. Some claim it spread from the Middle East via trade. Others insist Ethiopian perfumers developed it independently, inspired by the layers of music and poetry in their culture. Either way, it's elegant, like composing with molecules instead of notes. Now comes the top. This is the sparkle, the invitation. Citrus peel, crushed mint, maybe a whisper of flower pollen. The kind of scent that says hello, even when it's halfway out the door. You grind carefully, keeping your movements even. You don't want to overpower the base. The top isn't the star, it's the spark. Once the full paste is blended, Meseret shows you how to test it. You smear a small amount onto the perfume stone, then warm it slightly over a flat dish of embers. Slowly, the scent unfurls, not in a burst, but a slow dance. First the citrus, then the herbs, and finally the resin, deep and steady like a drumbeat beneath the rest. You lean in. Your creation smells. Not bad. Not bad at all. Messeret leans in too. Her expression is unreadable. Then, might seduce a goat herder, maybe a minor priest. You beam. High praise. Later, you help fill small clay pots with the paste. The pots are lined with beeswax to help preserve the blend. Some are sealed with linen and string. Others are left open to continue infusing in the sun. The workshop buzzes gently with talk and laughter. You're beginning to recognize the rhythm of the place. Quiet work, shared breath, brief laughter, then more quiet. No one rushes here. The scent would punish them if they did. Before the sun hits its peak, Messeret brings you a surprise. A polished flask, shaped like a teardrop and sealed with a carved bone stopper. Your batch, she says. Not terrible, not amazing, but yours. You hold it in both hands. The contents are warm from the sun. You pull the stopper and sniff. It smells like your last few days, like dust and sunlight and patience. A little smoky, a little green, and unmistakably frankincense. You've built a scent from scratch, and it smells like you survived something. One of the younger apprentices sidles up beside you. First perfume? You nod. She leans in conspiratorially. Did you cry when it worked? I cried. You chuckle. I sweated a lot. That probably counts. The girl holds up her own blend, a much bolder mix of orange peel and burnt bark. I call mine Storm Goat. You blink. That's honestly kind of perfect. The two of you sit for a while, dabbing perfume onto your wrists, your scarves, even your sandals. Messeret pretends not to see it, but she's smiling faintly as she stirs a pot of steeping oil. And somewhere nearby, a breeze lifts across the rooftops, carrying with it a tangle of scents, memory, mischief, sunlight, and you. By now your nose is no longer just a tool, it's a language, and today that language gets tested. The courtyard workshop hums with the quiet chaos of the morning rush. Small bowls of pastes and oils are laid out in tidy rows. Perfume stones are warming on flat stones in the sun. And beside them, a long wooden bench has been cleared, as if something serious is about to take place. Messeret gives you a knowing smile. Today, she says, we train your nose. You chuckle. I thought I've been training it. She raises a brow. No, you've been exposing it. Now you learn to listen. She leads you to the bench, where 10 small covered dishes sit waiting. You're allowed one breath of each. Then you have to name what you smell. Simple, right? You take your first sniff. Something lemony, bright. Citrus? You guess. Rotten orange peel, she replies. You wince. Not off to a strong start. Next, something spicy, sharp, a little bitter. Clove? Almost. Dried ginger root, she says, tilting the dish. Your nose is guessing. You need to let it remember. You move on. Dish after dish. Some familiar, some utterly strange. One smells like wood smoke and honey. Another smells like hot stone and moss. One smells exactly like the inside of your grandmother's wooden jewelry box, which is confusing because she lived nowhere near Ethiopia and was mostly into knitting. Messeret nods as you struggle. The nose is a gatekeeper, but it only opens if you stop demanding. Let the scent find you. It sounds like a proverb. It probably is. You're too humbled to argue. Then comes a dish with resin you recognize. Frankincense, obviously, but mixed with something metallic? You sniff again. It hits the back of your nose, sharp and cold. Is that iron? Messeret lifts the lid fully. Inside is powdered frankincense mixed with a few drops of rainwater collected from a bronze basin. A traditional blend for temple rituals, she explains. It makes the scent heavier, earthbound. Now at Maud. Kess sense. It smells like a memory from before you were born. You're not the only one in training today. Another apprentice is being taught how to separate frankincense types by color and texture alone. She has to sort 20 tiny chunks without smelling them, a sort of resin chess. Meanwhile, the older scent makers sit in the shade, sipping honey wine and trading jokes in low tones. One of them gestures you over. "You have a nose, yes?" he says. His fingers are stained yellow with dried petals. "Let's see if it's smarter than your mouth." He hands you a scroll of cloth and uncovers 2 oil pots. One is a blend of myrrh, sesame, and crushed pine bark. The other, well, you're not sure. It smells like cinnamon and regret. "Which one is for funerals?" he asks, eyes twinkling. You sniff carefully. One scent is warm and calming. The other is oddly sterile, almost soapy. You point to the second. He claps his hands. "Wrong. That one is for first birthdays. The other one, too calming. People might fall asleep in the middle of a blessing." You're not sure if he's serious. You're also not sure you care. You're laughing too hard to worry about it. Historians still argue whether these scent tests were formal rituals or simply exercises passed along through oral tradition. Some believe ancient Ethiopian apprentices underwent years of training before they were allowed to blend for royalty or temple rites. Others suggest more informal systems, guided by elders, rooted in the community's rhythm rather than hierarchy. But here's what's clear. Knowing scent isn't about memorization. It's about attention. Later, you sit quietly under the shade of a fig tree. A bowl of water rests beside you, and a few strips of linen soaked in oil lie across your knees. Your task? To blend a new scent, on instinct. Meseret gives you 3 ingredients only: powdered frankincense, lemon leaf, ayaz, and dried rose petal. "Make something that smells like a memory," she says, then walks away. No pressure. You breathe each scent in separately, letting your mind wander. The frankincense grounds you, the rose pulls something soft from the edges of your thoughts, and the lemon is like a window flung open. You mix, slowly, carefully, and when you warm it over your perfume stone, the scent that rises isn't perfect, but it feels true. Meseret returns, takes one breath, and pauses. "What's it called?" she asks. You hesitate. "I don't know." She shrugs. "Then it doesn't need a name." She gives you a quiet nod, not of praise, not of approval, but of recognition. And in that moment, your nose has graduated. It's no longer just a filter between the world and your brain. It's a compass. The next morning, you're already awake before the sun lifts over the hills. Not from noise or obligation, but because the air smells different. There's a heaviness to it, like the scent has thickened overnight, steeped in earth and patience. You step into the courtyard, where Meseret is waiting beside a low stone table. "Today," she says, placing a small cloth over your shoulder, "we grind the divine." You blink sleep from your eyes. "That sounds dramatic?" She smiles. It is. The process of turning resin into perfume doesn't begin with luxury. It begins with labor, and a lot of it. She gestures to the table. On it sits a granite mortar as wide as your chest, blackened smooth with years of use. Next to it, a smaller pestle carved from polished wood. Bowls of dried frankincense tears gleam like sunlit amber. The scent already rises into the morning like a kind of quiet insistence. This is sacred work. You start by sorting the resin. Not all tiers are equal. Some are honey-colored and nearly translucent. These are the finest, used in perfume for temples or royalty. Others are cloudy, dusted in bark, or tinged with ash. These will be burned, used for rituals, healing, or deterring insects. You cradle one especially clear drop in your palm, holding it up to the light like a tiny fossilized sun. "Grind that one last," Meseret says. "It deserves respect." You nod solemnly, only half joking. She shows you how to place the resin in the mortar, then wrap a cloth over it to trap the dust. Then you begin to grind, slowly, clockwise, with the weight of your whole arm. At first, nothing happens. The resin sticks, resists, but gradually it begins to break. Shards flake off like snow. Then it starts to yield, turning to fine yellow dust, soft and warm. You lift the cloth, and the scent rises in a silent bloom. You cough a little, not because it stings, but because it moves. The soul of the tree, Meseret murmurs. It's always stronger when it's released. Historians still argue whether ancient Ethiopian perfumers used grinding stones or bronze tools for this part of the process. Some excavated sites show shallow basalt mortars worn smooth by decades of use. Others suggest wooden tools were used for specific mixes to avoid heating the resin too quickly. In any case, the goal was the same: a powder that could merge with oils without burning away its essence. You grind for what feels like hours. Your shoulders ache, your fingers are sticky, and yet it feels right, like penance and art in one motion. When the resin is fully powdered, you mix it into warmed sesame oil. The paste thickens, golden, glossy, and fragrant. You stir slowly with a sliver of carved bone, scraping the edges so no speck is wasted. Then come the roots. Meseret hands you a bowl of chopped herbs, some familiar, others alien. One smells like pepper and lemon, another like dried tea and old wood. There's a sliver of something black and bitter that smells like it belongs in a dungeon, not a perfume. "You'll thank me later," she says, tossing it in. You stir them in one at a time, watch it. As each changes the scent's shape. Some lift it, some deepen it. Some seem to vanish until you inhale again and they bloom from nowhere, like a ghost you forgot you invited. Next, you add heat. A small clay dish sits over embers. You pour the thick paste into it, stirring constantly. Too much heat and the resin scorches. Not enough and it won't bind. Meseret fans the fire, watching the temperature with the back of her hand like a cook watching stew. Soon, the perfume begins to darken in color. It thickens again, and the scent becomes richer, rounder, more intimate. It no longer floats. It clings. You remove the pot from heat and stir in beeswax, a trick to preserve the scent for longer. The wax melts, merging with the oils to create something smoother, softer. The final touch? A pinch of flower dust. Meseret sprinkles dried hibiscus and crushed blue petals into the pot. Not for scent, they won't last, but for color. The perfume takes on a faint, rosy hue, like the blush of dusk. "You made this," she says, holding the pot toward you. You dip a finger in, dab a bit behind your ear. It's smoky, but warm. Spiced, but gentle. The frankincense sits at the center like a temple. Everything else just candles around it. You inhale once, twice. It smells like work, like reverence, like the idea of time. You're not alone in your pride. The other apprentices have gathered, nodding at your work. One offers a strip of cloth to wrap your pot. Another offers a carved stopper. It's a quiet ceremony, no clapping, no fanfare. Just scent. And as you sit there, palms sticky and soul quiet, you realize the truth of it. You didn't just grind resin today. You ground silence into scent. You turned waiting into memory, and you bottled it. You wake the next day to the smell of smoke, but not the kind that warns of danger. This smoke is soft, sweet, sacred. It wafts through the slatted windows and ribbons, curling around your ankles as you sit up. Somewhere nearby, a burner has just been stoked, and the scent of frankincense is rising into the morning like an offering. Today, you're going to learn how to capture scent through steam. You find Meseret in the shaded rear of the compound, standing beside a curious contraption. It's a large clay vessel with a long, curved neck and a small collection bowl at its base. Coils of copper piping run through a trough filled with cool water. The whole thing looks like a cross between an alchemist's flask and an overqualified teapot. She points to it. Steam distillation. Not as old as grinding, but gentler and quieter. You step closer. The resin you ground yesterday is now sitting in the upper bowl of the vessel, resting on a woven mat just above water level. The bowl itself is sealed tight with clay paste. "Ready?" she asks. You nod. She lights a fire beneath the vessel. Slowly, the water heats. The steam rises through the resin, coaxing its oils into vapor. The scent molecules lift like tiny prayers, carried along copper tubes to the cooling basin. There, they condense, drip by golden drip, into the collection bowl below. It's perfume born from patience. You kneel beside the bowl, watching each droplet fall like the tick of a fragrant clock. The liquid is pale yellow, a little cloudy, and intensely aromatic. You dip a finger in. It smells sharper than your paste, more volatile, but still rounded. Where the paste you made clung like memory, this one flutters like breath. You can imagine someone anointing their wrists before prayer, or dabbing it behind their ears before slipping behind a curtain. Distilled frankincense, Meseret says softly. It whispers, doesn't shout. Historians still argue when this technique first reached Ethiopia. Some say it came via Arabic traders from the Levant, where distillation had already taken root. Others believe local artisans developed parallel methods using fire, clay, and instinct long before any contact was made. What's clear is that, by the late Aksu, Mite period, steam-extracted perfumes were prized, used in healing, in sacred rites, and yes, in seduction. As the batch finishes, you help remove the vessel from heat. The clay is warm in your hands, and the resin inside has turned dark, almost charred. Its essence has been taken, respectfully. Later, you try another method, smoke infusion. This one's older, simpler, almost primal. A shallow clay bowl is filled with burning charcoal. On top, a bronze grate. Above that, a thin dish holding sesame oil. Once the oil is warm, you add crushed frankincense directly into the smoke. The smoke passes through the oil, flavoring it with scent. Unlike steam, this method adds a touch of fire, a faint, toasted note that gives the perfume warmth. You swirl the oil gently, watching it darken to amber. You dab a bit onto your skin. It smells like old temples in sunlit stone. Heavier, but grounding. You imagine royalty wearing it not to impress, but to announce their presence. One of the older perfumers sidles over and offers you a riddle. How do you capture what cannot be held? You blink. Scent? He grins. No, time. But scent is the closest thing. He nods toward the infused oil in your hand. That smell is a morning that will never happen again. And just like that, your breath catches. Because he's right. Later, you experiment with blending both methods, mixing a bit of your steamed extract into the smoked oil. The result is strange, complex. It smells like hope caught inside an old story. Meseret sniffs it and hums. It's young, she says, but it will age well. You tuck that compliment into your heart like a note folded into a pocket. That evening, the apprentices gather in a circle to share their blends. No one judges. No one competes. It's not that kind of place. Instead, they pass the bowls and stones around, taking deep, meditative breaths. Each scent tells a different tale. One smells like a rainy courtyard, another like fresh-cut wood and grief. One smells like a mother's shawl. Another like the first moment someone knew they were in love. You offer yours last, the double method blend, steam and smoke. They pass it around in silence. Then someone sighs. Smells like a door closing gently. It's the best compliment you've ever received. You sit back, the stars bright above, the smoke curling from a nearby censer. The world smells slow and holy, and for once, exactly enough. By now, you've ground resin into paste, distilled it into oil, and infused it through smoke. But today, the scent has a different purpose. You're led through a narrow alley behind the workshop where high stone walls keep the sun at bay. The scent in the air has changed. Less citrus, more mystery. There's an edge to it, thicker, almost sacred. Ahead, you hear soft chanting and the distant rhythm of hand drums. Messeret places a hand on your shoulder. No blending today, she says. Today, you learn how scent becomes prayer. You follow her into a small temple carved directly into the hillside. Its entrance is low, its interior shadowy and cool. The walls are etched with symbols and script, some familiar, others as old as silence. In the center of the room sits a wide stone bowl filled with glowing embers. Above it, a brass censer sways gently from a chain, already streaming with fragrant smoke. A priest approaches, robed, quiet, ageless in the way that only serious people seem to achieve. He nods to Messeret, then to you, and sprinkles a mix of powdered frankincense and crushed herbs into the censer. Instantly, the smoke changes color. Thicker, golden, ribboning toward the ceiling like it knows where heaven is. The priest begins to chant in Ge'ez, the ancient liturgical language. His voice is low, steady, and strange in its calmness. The smoke responds as if dancing with each syllable. It winds through the air like meaning made visible. You sit beside the censer and breathe slowly. The scent is sharp, almost electric, but then it softens, warms, deepens, and then, oddly, it vanishes. Not in the literal sense. You can still see it, but your brain stops registering it. The scent has become part of the air, like the room itself is exhaling prayer. Frankincense doesn't just scent the space, Messeret whispers beside you. It changes the way time moves in it. She's not wrong. As the ceremony continues, you lose track of minutes, maybe even hours. People enter and exit silently. Some light candles, others kneel. No one speaks. The smoke speaks for them. Historians still debate how central incense was to Ethiopian religious life. We know frankincense was used in Christian, Jewish, and indigenous rituals. But was it always burned for the divine? Or did its meanings shift? Some argue it was originally a gift to the gods, while others believe it was a medium for the gods to pass through. One theory suggests certain blends were burned not for prayer, but for prophecy. You watch as the priest adds a second layer of resin, this time darker, more bitter-smelling. The smoke thickens again, filling the small temple until the light filtering through the stone doorway looks like solid gold. The chanting softens, and then silence. You stay seated even after the priest leaves. It feels wrong to move. The scent seems to be holding the very stillness in place, like perfume scaffolding around a sacred hush. Later, Messeret shows you how ceremonial blends are prepared. They differ from perfumes. These blends are not about beauty, they're about intent. Each ritual has its own signature. A blessing blend might include cedar and fig wood. A mourning blend might use charred myrrh and dried plum bark. A birth blessing might feature crushed jasmine and saffron, though these are rarer and reserved for noble families. You help mix one of each, not to burn, but to understand. She hands you a small woven pouch, filled with what she calls Barney scent, a blend used in rituals when someone is leaving for a long time, or returning after too long. It smells like lemon, soil, ash, and sunlight. You press it to your face and breathe in. It smells like homesickness before you know you're going to miss something. Outside the temple, the town has grown quiet. The market has dimmed. Even the birds seem to pause. You feel like you've walked out of something deeper than a ceremony, like you were underwater, and scent was the tide that carried you through. As you walk back to the workshop, you pass a child playing with a miniature censer, carved from soft wood and trailing a single thread of smoke. She holds it like a treasure. And you realize, for all your blending and grinding and perfecting, this might be the truest use of scent. Not as adornment, not as product, but as presence. The day begins with a story. You're in the workshop, seated cross-legged on a reed mat, sipping warm barley tea. The apprentices around you are quiet, hands idle, eyes curious. Meseret stands before the open doorway, sunlight spilling behind her like a halo. She carries a carved wooden box, its surface dark from oil and age. She sets it down gently and opens it. Inside are bundles of dried petals, tiny clay vials sealed with wax, and folded linen sachets faintly yellowed with time. And in the center of it all, wrapped in silk, is a small ivory comb. Today, she says, we remember the queen who bathed in myrrh. The apprentices lean in. You mean the Queen of Sheba? One asks. Meseret smiles. Maybe, or maybe not. The stories blur, but the scent stays. She unfolds the silk to reveal a small ceramic jar, cracked at the edge, but still whole. You catch the scent before you even lean in. Sweet, woody, a little musky. It's the perfume of memory itself. She hands it to you, and your breath catches. It smells like heat and hun, like distant rain and dried citrus. It's not just pleasant, it's confident. This was her signature scent, Meseret says. Legend says she used it before every audience with foreign envoys. She'd bathe in oils scented with frankincense, myrrh, cinnamon, and rosewood, not to charm them, to warn them. You raise an eyebrow. With perfume? With presence, she corrects. Historians still argue whether the legendary queen who visited King Solomon was Ethiopian or South Arabian, real or myth, or a blend of many rulers. But in every version, her scent arrives before she does. In one tale, she travels with a caravan of camels so heavily perfumed that Solomon's court could smell her days before she arrived. Another version claims her feet never touched the earth because they were too soaked in sacred oils, and her fragrance was holy. You hold the jar in your lap and wonder, is it exaggeration? Probably. But then again, if you smelled like that all the time, you wouldn't touch the ground either. Meseret leads you to the bathing area behind the workshop. It's shaded by fig trees, with shallow basins carved from stone. A pot of water has been gently warming beside the coals, and now she adds a handful of powdered myrrh and crushed frankincense. Steam rises instantly. You lean over the basin, eyes closed. The scent wraps around your face like velvet. You learn how to mix a bathing oil, sesame, beeswax, drops of floral extract, and powdered resin. It thickens to a honey-like texture. One dab into warm water, and the entire basin becomes liquid perfume. You dip a cloth in and wipe your arms, your neck. The scent clings, not heavy, but purposeful, like you've walked through something older than air. Meseret nods in approval. Now you know what power feels like. You laugh. I feel like a slightly less exhausted goat. Same thing, she shrugs. In the afternoon, you learn how noblewomen stored their perfume, layered in linen sachets, sealed with fontaine, aig leaves, sometimes buried in cool soil under clay tiles to preserve the scent in heat. Some even infused their combs with oil, so every stroke of the hair released their personal blend. You're shown one such comb, old, brittle, carved with tiny suns and spirals. Even now, it holds the ghost of a scent. You run your fingers across its teeth and catch a faint trace of rosewood. Later, an elder storyteller joins you for tea. He's thin as a broom and twice as creaky, but his voice could smooth stone. Back then, he says, people didn't just wear scent. They walked in it. You'd know a ruler not by the gold on her arms, but by the way her presence filled a room. He smiles. And her absence, too. You sip your tea, letting the perfume in the air linger on your tongue. There's a quiet lesson here. Scent isn't always for others. Sometimes it's for you. A way of saying, I was here, I mattered, I lingered. You sit with that thought long into the evening, perfumed towel around your shoulders, stars bright above, skin soft from resin oil. Somewhere in the back of your mind, the queen is still bathing, and her story is still being told. By now you've grown used to the scent of frankincense clinging to your every movement, your clothes, your breath, even the shadows of your thoughts. But nothing prepares you for what Meseret presents next. She hands you a pouch, soft and worn, filled with what looks like crumbs. You raise an eyebrow. Perfume ingredients? She grins. The strange ones. Inside are flecks of charred fruit peel, something powdery and brown, a few curled herbs that look suspiciously like dried worms, and, most confounding of all, a small, resin-dark pellet that smells faintly like wet fur. You look up at her. Okay, which animal gave its life for that? She chuckles. None. That's Hyrax dung. You pause. I'm sorry, did you say dung? Yes, she replies. Ice, absolutely unfazed. Rock Hyrax, don't worry, it's aged and dried and smoked. You stare at the pellet again, this time with the kind of caution usually reserved for snakes and tax paperwork. Apparently dried animal droppings, especially from Hyraxes who eat herbs, bark, and flowers, were sometimes collected for their strangely complex aroma. Left to cure in the sun for weeks, then gently smoked, the result wasn't disgusting. It was earthy, musky, almost sweet. Used sparingly, it added body and a mysterious warmth to certain high-end perfumes. You've worn it already, Meseret says casually. Remember that mix we made on your second day? You stare at her, betrayed. Historians still argue whether these animal-derived elements were widely used or reserved for specific elite perfumes. Some accounts from early Arab and Greek travelers mention civet and musk, while others speak only of floral and resin scents. It's likely that certain local formulas, especially those made for royalty or spiritual rituals, included these stranger additions not just for smell, but for their energetic properties. It's not just about scent, one of the older perfumers explains. It's about spirit. You blend not only what smells good, but what carries the right weight. He shows you another odd ingredient, scorched orange peel, ground fine. It's sharp, almost bitter, but it cuts through heavier oils like sunlight through a dense forest. Then there's fermented bark powder, smells like moldy books, but rounds out harsh scents with a velvety undertone. Another? Powdered termite mound clay. You don't even ask. That afternoon, you help prepare a ritual blend said to calm angry ancestors. It involves crushed frankincense, myrrh, a touch of lemon balm, and a minuscule pinch of Hyrax dung. The final scent is deep, complex, like walking through a forest during the first spring rain. You dab a bit on your wrist. It blooms strangely, earthy at first, then green, then spa, icy. Somehow it feels older than the other perfumes, like it knows things. Later, during a meal under the jacaranda trees, the conversation turns to scent and superstition. Some believe a touch of dung-infused oil on the earlobe can ward off nightmares. Others say burning it before a wedding guarantees a peaceful marriage. Meseret leans in. I once used it to drive off a suitor. Was it that bad? You ask. She grins. No, the perfume was too good. His mother hated it. It's during moments like this that you realize perfume isn't always about seduction or status. Sometimes it's a shield, sometimes a signal, and sometimes just a quiet little joke between you and the day. You start experimenting with your own strange blend. Just a drop of smoked dung, a few flecks of clove, a base of sesame oil, and powdered frankincense. It smells, shockingly, not bad. A little weird. A little forest after the fire. But intriguing. One of the younger apprentices smells it and says, "It's like if a mountain had feelings." You beam. By evening, you've wrapped the blend in cloth and tucked it into a cool corner of the workshop. Not to forget it, but to let it rest. Perfumes, like people, need time to soften. As the sun sets and the coals fade in the burners, you lie back against a wall, the scent of hyrax and frankincense still clinging to your fingers. And you think even the oddest things, when treated with care, can become beautiful. Even dung. You're halfway through a bowl of barley stew when Meseret walks past and casually drops a pouch in your lap. "For your feet," she says, as if that explains everything. You blink at it. "What about my feet?" She points at your boots, dusty and sad. "They smell like travel. Time to fix that." Inside the pouch is a soft powder that smells faintly sweet and medicinal. You catch hints of eucalyptus, myrrh, and something wood, maybe sandalwood or something like it. It's oddly comforting, like old parchment and fresh air. You're about to ask if it's just deodorant, but Meseret shakes her head before you speak. "It's medicine. Perfume is medicine too. Don't forget that." You sit back and watch as other apprentices mix small batches of fragrant salves and balms. Some are for easing headaches, others for calming nerves. A few are rubbed on joints to ease the ache of long days walking. All of them contain frankincense. Today, you're learning the healing side of scent. The group gathers around a low table scattered with ingredients: dried mint, powdered cinnamon bark, smoked cloves, eucalyptus oil, old rose petals, and powdered resin. Frankincense in its finest, ground form. You start with the headache blend. The base is sesame oil, warmed gently over a clay plate. Into it, you stir a small spoonful of frankincense powder, followed by a pinch of crushed mint and one dried clove. The scent lifts immediately, cool and sharp at first, but with a soft, resinous echo beneath it. You test a dab on your temples, and the tension in your forehead begins to loosen like a knot untied by heat. It's not dramatic, just quieter. Meseret watches. See? It's not about erasing pain. It's about making it gentle enough to bear. Then comes the balm for sore feet. This one is thicker, made with beeswax and infused with lemongrass, pine oil, and a touch of powdered resin. You rub it onto your ankles, and within minutes, the ache of days spent walking the hills fades to a low, sleepy hum. You could nap standing up. There's also a blend burned in tiny smoke pots, just a few tears of frankincense and a sprig of dried sage. This smoke is said to ease breathing and soothe coughs. One apprentice, who's been sneezing for days, sits beside the burner with a cloth over her head. 5 minutes later, she's humming and rolling her shoulders like she hasn't been congested since birth. Historians still debate how. Formally, scent was used in ancient Ethiopian medicine. Some scrolls suggest perfumers and healers were separate professions. Others imply the line was blurred. Temples often housed both incense burners and herbalists, and the two shared tools, knowledge, and even language. Frankincense, notably, appears in both medicinal texts and spiritual ones, a rare dual-use ingredient. You assist an elder healer named Dagmawi, whose hands are stained golden from years of resin blending. He teaches you how to mix a calming salve used in childbirth rituals. Sesame oil, frankincense powder, lavender, and crushed acacia root. It smells like dusk and lullabies. You rub it on the mother's hands, he explains, so she remembers to breathe. Later, he gives you a more curious task, preparing a scent for sleep. Not for relaxation, for actual deep, body-wrapped in starlight sleep. The blend includes powdered resin, myrrh, dried lemon peel, smoked chamomile, and a tiny amount of honey, stirred into warm oil and applied to the soles of the feet before bed. You make it. You try it. And that night, you sleep like stone. No dreams, no fidgets, just the deep, full silence of being entirely held by scent. The next morning, you wake up before dawn without needing to. You sit quietly by the fire, watching the first threads of smoke rise from the hearth, and you finally understand what Meseret meant. Perfume isn't about being noticed. It's about being well, Not just beautiful, not just fragrant, but balanced, at ease, human. You roll the sleep balm between your hands and press it gently against your forehead, a blessing. And for once, you don't reach for words. You reach for breath. Today, you stand at the edge of the sea. You didn't expect this. The waves, the gulls, the humid wind filled with salt, and the sharp kiss of brine. It's a jolt after so many days of dry hills and Dusun, Thai courtyards. But you followed the scent of frankincense to its next destination, across. The port city is busy, loud, and alive with motion. Sailors shouting in multiple tongues, goats refusing to board boats, baskets spilling with figs, and carts piled with clay jars sealed in beeswax. And everywhere, the smell of incense clings to wood, wool, even the sails flapping above. Meseret had smiled as she sent you off. Go see where our perfume goes when it leaves our hands. You're here to witness the Red Sea trade, the scent route that carried Ethiopian perfume to Arabia, the Levant, and far beyond. Frankincense wasn't just burned in temples or worn by nobles. It was loaded into ships and sent off in silent promise, bound for the world's most fragrant corners. Your guide here is a merchant named Fekadu. He's sharp-eyed, salt-skinned, and speaks 6 languages, including sarcasm. This way, he says, ducking under a swinging basket of dried fish. Stay close. Don't smell anything you can't afford. He leads you to the dock, where amphorae are being loaded by the dozen. You get close to one. It's sealed with linen and beeswax, but even through the wrapping you catch it, the unmistakable scent of powdered frankincense and citrus balm. These are bound for Saba, Fekadu says. From there, maybe Damascus, maybe Babylon. You whistle softly. That far? He nods. The scent outlasts the ship. Historians still argue just how extensive the scent trade was. Some claim Ethiopian ports like Adulis were among the busiest in the ancient world, hubs where incense, spices, ivory, and even live animals were exchanged for silk, wine, or silver. Others argue the traffic was smaller, more seasonal. But all agree on one point. Frankincense moved. And where it moved, stories followed. Fekadu introduces you to the ship's captain, a woman named Nura whose laugh is louder than the wind. Her vessel is small but sturdy, its sails stitched with symbols you can't quite decipher. Smell that? She says, pointing to a sealed pot. That's priest's grade, paid for with a ruby ring and half a goat. You ask her if she wears perfume on voyages. She shrugs. Not on me. But the boat? Always. She dabs a tiny bit of oil onto the mast, then onto the rudder. Keeps the ship in balance. Keeps me from dreaming of sinking. You climb aboard and set out on a short crossing. Just a test run. The sea rolls gently beneath you, and the scent of resin oil on the ropes warms under the sun. It mingles with salt, wood, and the scent of old tar. The combination is strangely soothing. Nura shows you her cargo log, carefully inked, with symbols for each grade of scent. Some jars are destined for nobles, others for healers. A few are marked W for worship. You lean against a crate, breathing it all in. It's not just perfume anymore. It's currency. It's diplomacy. It's trust, sealed with wax. That night, back on shore, Fekadu brings you to a warehouse where traders mix scents for foreign clients. You meet a mixer from Yemen, another from Alexandria. They each add local flourishes. Orange blossom here, dried fig wood there. You watch as Ethiopian frankincense becomes Egyptian temple oil, Arabian court perfume, Roman anointing balm. The same resin, different stories, different tongues. You dab a bit from each blend on your wrist. They all smell like home, but not your home. You realize, once it leaves the hills, the scent becomes something else. It travels, it changes, and yet, it carries a piece of where it began. You sit by the sea that evening, waves soft, breeze rising, watching ships fade into the horizon. Somewhere out there, someone will open a jar, and the scent will rise, sharp, sweet, sacred, and they'll have no idea your hands helped make it. But you'll know. You return inland with sand in your sleeves, salt crusting your boots, and a new understanding of where the scent goes once it leaves your hands. The sea is behind you now, but the resin still clings to your skin as though it knows you're not finished with it yet. In truth, you're just beginning. This morning, Messeret greets you with something between a smirk and a warning. You've been summoned. You squint. By whom? She raises an eyebrow. By someone who smells better than you. You're sent through winding alleyways, past shaded stalls and quiet courtyards, to a compound of carved stone and high wooden gates. Inside, it's cooler, quieter, like stepping into a temple built not for gods, but for noses. Here, in the heart of the city, lives Alam, the royal perfumer. He's tall, rail-thin, and looks like he's always halfway through smelling something too complex to name. When you enter, he doesn't speak. He simply gestures toward a low table and returns to stirring a pot of thick golden oil over coals. His robes are dark and simple, but the scent around him is not. It's layered: wood, resin, wine, and the dry sparkle of citrus peel left in sun. You sit, silent, trying not to inhale too loudly. Eventually, Alam speaks, without looking up. We are making a scent for a prince. You nod, expecting further instructions. He offers none. Instead, he pulls a shallow box from a shelf and opens it with great care. Inside, 20 vials, labeled only with symbols. You recognize some by smell: crushed fig bark, honeyed myrrh, powdered blue lotus, a hard yellow resin that smells faintly like hot stone after rain. He selects 3 ingredients and places them before you. Powdered frankincense, of course, dried black fig leaf, and rose petals soaked in cinnamon water. These are the bones, he says. Now build the rest. You stare at them, heart thumping. Any direction? East, he says. Then, and north. You have no idea what that means. But you begin. You start with the base, frankincense and a touch of sesame, oil. You grind the fig leaf into a paste and mix it gently, breathing through your nose slowly. The scent that rises is grounding, almost meditative. Then the roses. You add them carefully, just a few drops of the cinnamon-steeped extract. The blend darkens, sweetens, sharpens. It's interesting. A scent that arrives with questions. You hesitate, uncertain. Alam walks over, sniffs once. He is young, he says, but not a fool. It should bite, not sting. You add a sliver of black pepper oil and a pinch of orange peel dust. The scent tilts, still warm, but brighter. It no longer clings, it prowls. He nods once. That's high praise. You learn that royal blends are not made for pleasure. They're statements. A prince's perfume announces his presence before his voice is heard and lingers long after he's left the room. It can flirt, threaten, reassure, or remind. In some courts, rulers changed scents like they changed robes. One for judgment, one for celebration, one for grief. You assist Alam as he composes several such blends. The presentation scent includes clove, cardamom, powdered frankincense, and a trace of dried basil. It smells like velvet and rules. This, Alam says, is for greeting envoys. Next, the meditation blend. He uses rare ingredients: dried fig resin, cooled beeswax smoke, and a single drop of blue lotus extract. You barely smell it at first, but the longer it sits on your wrist, the deeper it becomes. Soft, weightless, and almost sad. Then there's the evening cloak. You don't ask what that's for, but it smells like secrets: warm tobacco, star anise, crushed nutmeg, and the faintest trail of ash. Historians still argue whether perfumers like Alam were artisans or statesmen. Some inscriptions refer to them as keepers of invisible crowns. Others suggest they were merely servants, albeit highly valued ones. But the reverence with which M moves, the stillness he commands, suggests something more. Here, scent is not accessory, it's authority. Late in the day, you're given one final task, to seal the prince's signature blend. It's ready now, decanted into a long, narrow flask made of pale ceramic. You tie a dyed cloth around its neck and drip beeswax into a carved indentation at the lip. Alim presses the prince's crest into it, a stylized lion's head, and the seal hardens as the sun begins to fall. The bottle is placed in a cedar box, then wrapped in linen and tucked into a satchel that will be carried to the capital by hand. It will arrive unshaken, still warm, still alive. You're not allowed to deliver it. Royal scents travel alone, Alim says. They should arrive like a whisper behind a closed door. You return to the apprentice quarters that evening, your hands still perfumed with the prince's blend. The others crowd around, asking questions. You let them smell your wrist. One says, "It smells like a man who drinks wine before speeches." Another murmurs, "It smells like someone who gives orders without looking up." You laugh, quietly. They're not wrong. But to you, it smells like what it is, earned. That night, you take a few drops of leftover oil, mix them with your own base, and dab the result on a strip of linen. You tuck it under your pillow. Not because it's the best thing you've made, but because it reminds you that even scent can wear a crown. You've made perfume that whispers, perfume that prowls, perfume that tells a prince how to walk into a room. But today, you learn something quieter, and in a way, far stranger. How a scent can say who you are. You're in the courtyard again, mixing oils by early light, when Meseret sits beside you without a word. She uncorks a small glass bottle, holds it beneath your nose, and lets you inhale. It smells like firewood, dried citrus, and frankincense that's been warmed just enough to melt your thoughts. It's sweet, yes, but also assertive, like it knows when to leave a conversation and isn't afraid to do it. You say, "This is familiar." Meseret smiles. "That's because you've met the woman who wears it." You blink. "Who?" She doesn't answer. Instead, she asks, "What do you smell like?" You open your mouth and pause. You've spent weeks learning to make perfume, to analyze it, to distinguish the delicate differences between sun-dried lemon peel and the peel dried on a slate roof. But no one's asked you this. Not yet. And you realize you don't know, which means it's time to find out. The workshop is reconfigured today. No royal blends, no ritual formulas. Just mirrors, perfume stones, and a lot of tiny, unlabeled vials. The goal? To create a personal blend, one that doesn't smell like a temple, a prince, or a bargaining chip in a shipping contract. One that smells like you. But first, you learn how people used scent. Alim returns just briefly to explain that in some parts of highland Ethiopia, each class, even each clan, had its own scent profile. Nobility preferred airy perfumes, light floral notes, cooled oils, barely a trace of resin. Middle merchants leaned into clove and citrus, warm, energizing, a little boastful. Farmers? Frankincense, sandalwood, and thick base oils that lasted through sun, wind, and sweat. And then there were regional scents. Northern Highlanders used smoked amber resin. Desert traders added dried tamarind and fig. Along the riverbanks, hibiscus and fermented bark. Each one told a story before you said a word. Historians still argue how strictly these olfactory customs were enforced. Some claim they were formalized, part of social etiquette. Others believe they evolved informally, passed down through kitchens, robes, and whispered rituals. Either way, everyone smelled like somewhere, or someone. You begin testing. First, your base. You start with frankincense. It's in your blood now, baked into your memory. But you blend it with moringa oil instead of sesame. The result is silkier, less earthy. You add one dried hibiscus petal, crushed to powder, and a slice of sun-dried orange peel. Sweet, but still rooted. Then, the heart. You try rose, too loud. You try mint, too clean. You try crushed sage leaf, and something clicks. Sage, sharp at first, melts into something contemplative, not herbal, thoughtful. Aromas, like people, take time to reveal their real intentions. You let the blend sit. You dab a little on your wrist and walk. You press some into the collar of your tunic. You even drop a dot onto a warm perfume stone and wait. After an hour, the scent lingers, but it's changed. What was sharp has softened. What was sweet has deepened. It doesn't call attention to itself, but if you get close, really close, it stays. Meseret smells your blend. She doesn't smile, but she says, "That's honest," and somehow, that's better. The other apprentices share theirs too. One smells like youth, basil and sugar cane, and the rush of green things not yet harvested. Another smells like a thunderstorm about to happen, myrrh, tamarind, a touch of petrichor made from clay soaked in rainwater and left to dry under moonlight. You ask how she managed that. She just says, "You have to feel wet soil." Of course. Later, you learn how these identity blends were used. Worn during festivals, weddings, even funerals, not to impress but to anchor. A way of saying, "This is me, whether I'm speaking or silent." Some lovers exchanged their scents instead of letters. Some warriors carried a pouch of their partner's perfume into battle. Some people were remembered not for their deeds, but for how they smelled when they hugged you goodbye. That night, Meseret hands you a tiny clay jar, your blend, sealed and marked with a single dot of rose paint. "No one else will wear this," she says, "unless you give it to them." You tuck it into your satchel with reverence. Because now, if anyone asks what you smell like, you finally have an answer. The days have grown longer, or perhaps slower. Tim, he seems to bend differently when every hour is marked not by clocks, but by scent. Today you're taught something both ancient and mundane: how to keep what you've made, preservation, storage, the invisible half of perfumery. You're in the lower storeroom, beneath the workshop, where the air is cool and damp and smells like sealed earth and sleeping oils. The walls are lined with clay jars, beeswax bricks, bundles of linen, and hundreds of small containers, some carved from bone, others from obsidian or soft wood. It feels like a scent library, and every vessel holds a secret you can't read until it's opened. Meseret lights a small oil lamp. "Perfume fades," she says, "but if you're clever, it fades slowly." You begin with the jars, wide-mouthed, low-fired ceramic, each lined with beeswax. The wax isn't just a sealant, it's a scent anchor. It keeps oils from absorbing into the porous clay and protects the mixture from moisture. You run your fingers along the inside of one and catch the faint smell of something citrusy, possibly a blend from months ago still clinging to the walls. You're handed a small paddle and shown how to line a jar, melting a beeswax coin over coals, then brushing it carefully inside before it cools. It smells sweet and smoky, like someone is baking honey into stone. Next, the stoppers. Some jars are sealed with leather soaked in resin, others with linen dipped in oil and wrapped tightly. For the most precious blends, you use cork pressed from fig bark and coated in pine tar. It's not elegant, but it holds the scent like a vault. You practice filling and sealing jars, dabbing a dot of each blend on a cloth tag. One scent smells like roasted fruit and earth, another like a rain-soaked forest floor. A third smells like someone you almost remember from a dream. You label it carefully. Memory, attempt 3. Historians still argue whether these techniques were standardized or highly personal. Some traders left written instructions. Others passed knowledge by scent alone. Apprentices asked to identify blends from sealed jars by memory, not label. What's clear is that storage wasn't passive, it was ritual. The sealing of a scent was as sacred as its creation. Then comes the most surprising method: burial. Meseret leads you to a garden behind the workshop. Beneath a shaded fig tree is a shallow pit covered by a flat stone. She lifts it. Inside are clay jars packed in sand, labeled with symbols drawn in ash. "These have been resting for a season," she says. Cool earth slows the scent's decay. You blink. Your aging perfume like wine? She nods. Or cheese. Or memory. You lift one of the jars, cool to the touch, still faintly vibrating with scent, and carry it back inside. It's a heavy, sleepy blend, full of softened edges. You open it and sniff. It smells warmer than it should, as if the scent learned how to whisper instead of shout. You reseal it and tuck it into the archive. 100 scents sleep there, some sealed years ago, some made last week. One jar is labeled simply, "Rain for my son." You don't ask. In the corner, a weaver is stitching scent cloths. Linen sachets meant to be worn inside garments, sewn into collars or wristbands. They're infused with oils and powders, then rolled and pressed flat. You help her make one, your blend, folded into blue cloth, tied with twine. You wear it beneath your tunic, and the scent lifts when you move, a secret you carry with every breath. Some of the cloths are made not to wear, but to send. Meseret pulls out a stack of dried scrolls, thin parchment sheets that smell like lavender and old fruit skins. "Letters," she says. "Scented ones." You blink. "Perfume as postage?" She shrugs. "Better than ink. Ink lies." Each skein, roll is infused with a particular scent. One smells like smoke and sorrow, another like early spring. They're folded into small triangles, sealed with wax and twine. The recipient will smell them before they even break the seal. You help prepare one for an outgoing caravan, a farewell blend, frankincense, fig, hibiscus, and crushed mint leaf. A note is written, then scented, then folded. It will travel farther than you might ever go. You're beginning to see it now. Scent isn't fragile. It's resilient. It can be folded, sealed, buried, and sent. It can outlive its maker. It can cross oceans and climb mountains and still arrive smelling like home. That evening, you make a jar for yourself. Your own blend, the one you created during Identity Day. You line the jar, warm the wax, seal the cloth, write the symbol. You don't name it. Instead, you bury it. Not far, just under the fig tree, just deep enough to rest. One day, weeks or months from now, you'll dig it up. And if it still smells like you, you'll know who you were. You wake to the sound of whispers, not the gossipy kind, but the soft hush of hands brushing parchment, fabric rustling, coals crackling. Today, the air in the courtyard feels secretive. Even the birds seem to keep their songs tucked under their wings. Meseret meets your eye and tilts her head toward the shaded veranda. "It's time you saw how we speak in scent." You follow her to a small, windowless room at the back of the compound. The walls are lined with rolled scrolls and bundles of dyed cloth. A single oil lamp glows on the table, and the entire space smells faintly of fig ash, beeswax, and something sharper, rosewood maybe. On the table lies a letter, already sealed with black wax. It smells like clove and lemon bark and a trace of powdered myrrh. "Don't open it," Meseret warns, just as your hand twitches. "It's not for you, but you can. Read it." She hands you a sheet of plain linen marked with symbols, circles, waves, dots, all drawn in fragrant ink. "This," she says, "is how we write with scent." You sit slowly, stunned. Here, in this quiet room, you're introduced to the ancient art of scented correspondence. It's not just about perfuming letters for elegance. It's a language. Each scent, or blend of scents, carries coded meaning, emotions, messages, warnings, even instructions. Historians still debate whether these scent codes were regional, familial, or universal. Some believe royal houses developed their own scent alphabets. Others argue they were shared systems, passed through merchant guilds or temple schools. One theory even claims scent codes were used to send instructions to spies. But Meseret waves that idea off. Too dramatic. Mostly it was love and arguments. You lean over another scroll. It smells like dried lilies, cinnamon, and pine resin. "That one," she explains, means I'm angry but still watching the moon we used to share. You blink. There's a code for that? There's a blend for everything, she says. You begin your training with the basics. Frankincense equals truth. Myrrh equals grief or longing. Burnt orange equals memory. Clove equals expectation. Mint equals new beginnings. Blue lotus equals dreams. Fig bark equals boundaries. Hibiscus equals the heart opened too far. Sandalwood equals patience. Hyrax dung I forgive you, but I don't trust you. You're not sure whether to laugh or take notes. Some letters were pure scent, no words at all. A folded linen square tied with string, marked only by the fragrance within. If you knew the code, it spoke louder than ink. If you didn't, well, you'd just think it smelled nice. Meseret hands you a small jar and a blank strip of linen. Write something. You pause, inhale, think. You grind a touch of frankincense, add a pinch of rose leaf, a little burnt peel, just a drop of lemon balm. You dab it onto the cloth, fold it twice, and seal it with wax. She lifts it to her nose, inhales, and smiles softly. You miss someone, but you're not sure they remember your name. You stare. She hands it back to you. You fold it again, tuck it into your pocket. You don't even remember blending the message so clearly, but she read it like a song. Later, you help prepare a pouch of scented scrolls to be carried by an outgoing caravan. There are 6 in total, each destined for a different household or temple. One smells like a meadow after rain, another like a hearth fire laced with smoke and salt. One smells like myrrh and iron. That one, Meseret says, is a quiet call to return. She doesn't explain more. The rest of the day is spent preparing ink, scented pigment made from resin ash, dried fruit peel, and powdered bark. You help stir a pot of it until your arms ache, then brush it onto cloth strips to dry. Once dried, these strips will carry messages farther than you ever will, across deserts, rivers, and lifetimes. Before nightfall, Meseret gives you one last task. Write a message to your future self. Use no words. You sit alone with your oil pot and mixing bowl. You start with myrrh. Add a touch of hibiscus, a curl of burnt cedar, a drop of moringa oil. You stir it slowly, feeling something in your chest unwind. You dab the blend onto a strip of linen, seal it in wax, and label it with a single mark. You bury it beneath a flat stone by the garden wall. No one will find it. No one else needs to. Someday, you'll dig it up. And remember the version of you who sat here, with resin-stained fingers and too many feelings to name. You're woken by a knock. Not a gentle apprentice tap, but the sharp rap of urgency. It's still dark, stars scattered across the sky, the moon barely clinging to the western horizon. You rub your eyes, stumble to your feet, and push open the wooden screen. Meseret stands there, cloaked, her face unreadable in the faint starlight. Put on your boots, she says. We have a Delia's. Ivory. You blink. Now? She hands you a leather satchel, already warm from the weight of sealed jars inside. Now, you don't ask questions. You've learned that when scent is involved, the calendar bends. You travel by lantern light through silent streets where the only sounds are dogs shifting in their sleep and the crunch of sand underfoot. You reach the edge of the compound wall where 2 mules wait, already saddled, their ears twitching. Another apprentice joins you. Tesfaye, the quiet one who once taught you how to slice a frankincense tree without breaking its rhythm. Meseret loads the bags, checks the straps, and hands you a sealed scroll. Do not open this unless someone tries to stop you. You blink again. Are we doing something illegal? She shrugs. No, just inconvenient. You ride before the sun rises, heading toward the border. Where? No one says. Why? also unanswered. All you know is that the satchel smells like clove, rose bark, and a kind of dark citrus you've never encountered in any blend before. It smells important. As dawn stretches over the hills, Tesfaye finally speaks. Sometimes scent isn't shared. You glance over. You mean, not for markets? Not for rituals? He nods. Some blends are forbidden, hidden, smuggled. You try to keep your voice steady. What kind of perfume needs to be smuggled? He shrugs. One that says something someone else doesn't want said. Historians still argue how widespread scent smuggling really was. Trade routes were heavily taxed. Certain types of resin, especially high-purity frankincense, were sometimes restricted to temples or royal courts. Some rulers banned specific flower oils during wars to prevent enemies from blending them into poisons or incantations. Other times, the perfume itself wasn't forbidden, but the message embedded in it was. You reach the checkpoint by mid-morning. A low wall, a wooden gate, and 2 guards who look half asleep and full of suspicion. They approach slowly, eyes scanning your mule, your face, the satchel at your side. One sniffs. Smells expensive. You try not to react. Temple order, you say, voice even. For a private ritual. He gestures toward the bag. Open it. Your fingers twitch toward the scroll Meseret gave you, but Tesfaye lifts a small pouch instead. Here, he says, offering it to the guard. A gift for your captain. The guard opens the pouch, sniffs once, and his expression shifts. He closes it quickly, nods, and waves you through. You don't ask what was inside. You don't need to. It wasn't just perfume. It was a password. The rest of the journey is uphill, through winding goat paths and rocky trails. You stop only once to water the animals and eat flatbread soaked in honey and cumin. The satchel stays sealed. When you arrive at the drop point, it's a small monastery built into the cliffside, half of it carved directly from the stone. A lone figure greets you, a monk perhaps, or a scribe. He says nothing, only gestures. You hand him the satchel. He opens one jar, breathes in deeply, and nods. Then he hands you something in return, a sealed bottle, smooth and black, its stopper tied with silver thread. No markings, no scent escaping. You tuck it carefully into your satchel and ride back in silence. When you arrive home that evening, Meseret is waiting by the fire. You place the bottle on the low table before her. She doesn't touch it, she just looks at it. That, she says, is a treaty. You stare. Not a scroll, not a ring, a scent, blended for one leader, worn by another. They will meet, and both will smell it, and know. You sit slowly. Know what? She finally lifts the bottle and uncorks it. The scent rises slowly, rich, complex. Notes of frankincense, cedar ash, dried plum, sandalwood, and, strangely, fig nectar. It smells like compromise, like caution dressed in beauty. They'll know, she says, that peace is possible. And suddenly, the long night ride makes sense. Some perfumes are made for temples, some for seduction, some for memory, but some are made to end wars. As the fire crackles and the scent winds its way into the room, you realize something you hadn't dared think before. Perfume is not small. It's not soft. It is, in the right hands, power. The morning after the delivery, the workshop feels quieter. Not empty, just softer, as if the air itself knows something sacred has happened and is giving you space to breathe. The usual clinking of tools, the hiss of warm oil, the soft murmur of apprentices grinding resin, it's all there. But there's a hush beneath it, like someone laid a blanket across the whole day. Meseret finds you outside, sitting by the fig tree. You're watching the ants crawl in perfect silence. She sits beside you, stretches her legs, and pulls a small bundle from her satchel. It's old, wrapped in worn linen and tied with a loop of dried vine. "This," she says, unwrapping it, "is a bottle of perfume made by my grandmother's grandmother." You blink. "That survived?" She nods. "Only just. And only because it mattered." The bottle is stone, dark, smooth, carved with a spiral symbol you don't recognize. She uncorks it gently and holds it out. You lean in, half expecting dust and disappointment. But what hits your nose is astonishing. It's faint, yes, but unmistakable. Aged resin, honey smoke, something herbal and sweet. Like a memory you never had but immediately miss. You whisper, "It still lives." She nods again. That's what scent does. When it's made with care, it waits. The rest of the day is spent tracing the story of that bottle. You follow its journey across 4 generations, from the northern highlands to the southern markets, carried in bridal satchels, worn in childbirth, hidden in war. It was a gift, then an heirloom, then a secret. You're shown the ledgers, carefully inked records of each person who wore it, and why. Not just names, but occasions. Worn before meeting a king, dabbed on. Wrists before hiding in the wheat bins. Used on the day a daughter left and didn't come back. Each entry has a scent adjustment, a drop of myrrh added in mourning, a dried fig blossom on a wedding day, a twist of pine resin during exile. The perfume evolved with its keepers, never rewritten, only edited. Historians still debate the practice of legacy perfumes. Some cultures passed recipes down unchanged, guarding them as family treasure. Others treated scent like story, meant to be rewritten by each generation, with every new joy and sorrow adding a note. In Ethiopian tradition, both existed side by side. Fixed blends used for ritual, and living blends that traveled with bloodlines. Meseret lets you hold the bottle for a while. It feels heavier than it looks. You close your eyes and breathe it in again. The scent shifts. This time it smells less like memory and more like protection, like someone is standing just behind you, watching over you. "Do you ever wear it?" you ask. Meseret shakes her head. "Only when I need to speak to someone I can't visit." You nod, understanding more than you expected to. Later, you visit the archive room, the place where sealed jars sleep in their wax-lined cubbies. You trace your fingers over the markings, symbols of moons, stars, river lines, family crests, even the occasional tiny animal. Each jar holds a scent that outlived its maker. You pause at one with a faded cotton ribbon around it. The tag reads simply, "Amari." There's no date, no other note. You ask Meseret. She shrugs. "Someone left it before I arrived. No one's opened it in 30 years. Your heart thuds. "Can I?" She hesitates. "If you're ready for someone else's memory." You lift the lid, and it's quiet. Not subtle, quiet. It smells like morning smoke and freshly turned soil, like mint left out overnight, like a hug from someone who never said goodbye. There's grief in it, but also kindness, the kind that doesn't ask to be noticed. You seal it again. Some scents aren't for learning, some are for remembering. That night, you sit alone by the fire with your own sealed jar in your lap. You haven't opened it since you buried it beneath the fig tree. But tonight, something in you stirs. You break the seal. The scent that rises is unmistakably yours. It carries the sun from your first day on the incense trail, the dust from your sandals after climbing the hills, the mint from your sleep blend, the ash from your mistakes, the cinnamon from your proudest moment. It is without question you, and it tells you something very simple. You were here, you mattered, you linger. You reseal it carefully, not to hide it, but to save it, for the day you'll need to remember. The sky is soft with morning haze as you rise for your final day among the perfumers. There's no ceremony, no grand farewell, just the usual smells wafting through the workshop, crushed resin, steeped flowers, warm sesame oil, faint charcoal. Comforting, familiar. Like waking in a room your soul already knows. You help sweep the courtyard, grind a fresh batch of myrrh, warm a bowl of beeswax until it melts like gold. The rhythm is the same as yesterday, but something in your chest has shifted. This isn't just work anymore, it's devotion. Later, Tesfaye meets you under the acacia tree with 2 mugs of barley tea. You sit together without speaking for a long while, the breeze lifting curls of smoke from a nearby incense bowl. It smells like cedar and lemon, your own blend, diluted and left out to dance with the wind. He finally says, "You came here empty." You nod. "And now?" You glance at your hands, still stained with oil, still fragrant with work. "Now I think I'll never be clean again." He smiles, slow and tired. That's how you know it worked. He hands you a scroll sealed in green wax. From Messeret. Inside is a simple note, just one line. When you can't speak, let your scent say it for you. Below the writing, someone has dabbed your original blend. It's faint now, aged just enough to feel nostalgic. You press the parchment to your chest. In the afternoon, you help prepare the last blend you'll ever make in this place. It's not for a prince, or a healer, or a letter. It's for the fig tree in the courtyard. You mix the ingredients slowly. Powdered frankincense, hibiscus petal, dried clove, a thread of honey. You warm it over a flat stone until it liquefies, then walk barefoot to the tree. You drizzle the blend along its roots, a tiny offering. Not for luck, for gratitude. Messeret appears behind you, quiet as ever. She kneels, adds a single drop of blue lotus oil. "For dreams," she says. "Yours, and the trees." As evening arrives, you pack your things. A few linen sachets, 1 sealed jar, a folded scroll, a tiny perfume stone, darkened by use. You don't take much. Most of what you're leaving with can't be carried. You pass through the gates, and no one says goodbye. But the wind carries a whisper of clove and fig bark as you go. And that's enough. As you walk into the dusk, past drying fields and distant drums, you think about all the people you'll never meet, who might one day smell something you made. A whisper of resin in a stranger's temple, a cloth beneath someone's wedding robe, a bottle passed down so many generations, no one remembers your name, only the way you smelled when you were alive. And that, perhaps, is enough too, because you were here, you mattered, you linger. And now, as the scent of our story fades into the soft folds of your imagination, let's slow everything down. Take a breath. A long one. Let it rise through your chest like steam through resin, and exhale slowly, like smoke lifting into a vaulted temple. You've walked far tonight, through markets and hills, along incense trails and royal corridors. You've listened to trees weep. You've stirred oil and time together until they became memory. You've spoken without words, carried messages in linen and wax, and left behind a part of yourself in every scent. And now, it's okay to let all of that settle, to rest in the silence beneath the story. You don't need to remember every resin or every ritual. Just let the feeling stay. That warm hum of something sacred. That weightless sense that you touch something older than language. Let your thoughts soften now, drift like steam rising off a warm bowl of scented oil. Let them curl and vanish like a ribbon of smoke in twilight air. Maybe you'll dream of fig trees and quiet courtyards. Maybe you'll just sleep, still and deep. Either way, you've earned it. You've lingered long enough in the land of scent. Now, close your eyes. Let the perfume of history hold you, and rest. Forever, if only for tonight.